This has been a great year for GVR. The bylaw changes proposed by the board were all approved, and we will begin moving towards a 9-member board in the next election year. We welcome 2 new board members this year, along with 2 old board members or existing board members. We have an awesome new fitness center at Desert Hills. Glass Arts has a permanent home at Santa Rita Springs and are settling into increasing their membership. So we're hoping they don't ask for a bigger area soon. Kanoa has been updated, looks great, except for the soap dispensers. And Del Sol Center is in the works, and Scott's looking at getting a vendor to provide food as we kick back and socialize. The upstairs is almost complete. We had a pool player who called me and said, it's a great place to have pool in because you have the view. He said, the problem was I kept missing the ball watching the view. So what could be next? Maybe when Scott gets his turn up here at the mic, he's going to fill us in on that. There are a lot of sour grapes out there from those losing the past election. It was difficult when they had not been elected and lost all their bids for election. They never had the support of the general members in the election, but have been busy squeezing their sour grapes. Sounds like our members are pretty aware. I have a small appreciation gift for 4 of our board members who have left. So I know Laurel's here. Laurel Dean served in 2022 to 2023 and part of the year 23 to 24 as our assistant treasurer. I'm going to give her a name tag back because we don't want it anymore. I don't think Ted is here. Ted Boyette served on the board 21 to 22, 22 to 23, and partial 23 to 24. He was kind of my parliamentarian. Whenever I stepped out of line, he would interrupt the meeting, and he didn't care who was talking, and he would tell me, you're out of line. So I do miss having Ted keeping us on the straight and narrow. Steve Gilbert replaced the resigned director in 2022, and he served in 22, 23, and 23 and 24. Dick Sutherland replaced the resigned director in August of 23, and he served out the 23-24 year. So with this said, I'd like to introduce David, who I'm sure who's our chief financial officer, and he's going to tell you about the audit, I think.
Okay, thank you, Marge, and thank you for getting everybody in a good mood for the exciting audit report. And it is going to be a good report. We have, I'll say this, the best audit firm I've ever worked with. So I'm really happy with them. And so today we have Carly Meza, who will be co-presenting along with Ralph Giuliotti, and they're both with R&A CPAs. They're the best. Thank you.
We might be great auditors, but we are not good at technology, clearly. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for such a kind welcome. As David mentioned, Ralph Giuliotti is our manager, and so he did all the hard work, and I just come up and take credit for his hard work. I am the partner in charge of signing the audit opinion. And this is our second year working with you guys. It has been an absolute pleasure. I'm not just saying this to return the compliment, but I have to tell you, we work with a lot of organizations, and the cooperation and the timeliness of response from the staff has been incredible. And we don't get that in every organization we work with. So it truly has been a pleasure working with you guys. So what we're gonna go through, this is gonna be pretty similar to what you guys heard from us last year. We'll do some updates, but there's some required communication that I'll have to go through, so it's gonna be a little repetitive. But the items we're gonna go through those required audit communications. I'll talk you through our audit report and opinion. We'll briefly touch on the key audit areas we looked at. Ralph's gonna walk you through some financial statement highlights and some changes in the financial statements from this year compared to last year. We will walk through any management letter comments we had, which are basically recommendations that we come across as we're doing our audit. Ralph's gonna also give you a quick update on what's impacting the industry, and then we'll leave some time for questions at the end. So here's the kind of boring part that I'm required to go through it from my professional standards. So we're just gonna touch on if there are any changes in your accounting practices. There was one new adoption of an accounting standard that was required to be implemented this year, and it's related to accounts receivable and allowance for credit losses. So for people who aren't paying dues or things along those lines. It wasn't a significant change. It was a really significant change for banks or people who have loans. There was a significant change to when you record an expected loss if somebody's not going to pay. But for you guys, there wasn't really a change to the numbers. It was really kind of a change to the disclosures. It outlined what ratios were allowed for you to use to estimate that loss. But again, in reality, we didn't have any significant changes to how you had been doing it in the past. There are some expanded disclosures when we talk through the financial statements. I'll bring your attention to the notes that were impacted by that. But aside from that change, there weren't any other significant changes to the accounting policies. There were no transactions during the period for which there aren't any like guidance to look to for how you're supposed to record that. We didn't have anything that was abnormal where we were kind of scratching our heads thinking, what's the right way to treat this? None of that occurred this year. We didn't have any difficulties encountered in performing the audit. As I mentioned, if a deadline was set for receiving something, it was met or exceeded, and we worked well with management and staff. And then going through, so there are certain adjustments that we find in an audit that we want to correct to make sure that the disclosures are useful and that the numbers are correct. And then there are some adjustments that, there's minor differences from a schedule to the trial balance, but they're really small or minimal. And so the corrected ones are included in your adjusting journal entries, and those we did identify 5 adjustments this year that weren't just reclassifications for presentation purposes. They centered around like the payroll accrual, some minor adjustments to fixed assets and depreciation. But these were all small dollars. They were not material to the financial statements overall. And then we did have 6 reclassifications where we may have, when you're doing the accounting from day to day, you're not presenting the way that generally accepted accounting principles requires you to. You're not putting everything that's current in a current account. And so these are kind of standard adjustments and reconciliations we do in order to get the financial statements presented the way they're required to be. So those are pretty standard recurring adjustments. We did have one past adjustment. So when I talked about the new accounts receivable standard, we looked at under the new model what the allowance should be. And it was frankly a little more conservative. And I appreciate that because I'm a conservative and I'm pretty risk averse. But so because there was a difference between what the model said and your allowance was a little bit higher, we chose not to post it because it was not material and management agreed with us. So that was the only adjustment identified that we passed on. We had no disagreements with management. As far as we're aware, there were no consultations by management to other independent accountants. Again, if there was a difference of opinion or management wanted to seek kind of a second opinion, we're not aware that any of those conversations happened, but if they have, we'd report them to you. And we did not have any other matters that we felt required communication to the board as a whole. Our audit report is an unmodified opinion. It's a clean opinion, so that's what we want. And so that's basically saying there are no material modifications to the financial statements that would be required to have them be correctly presented. We did have one new paragraph in the audit report if you were to compare them year to year, and this is what we call an emphasis of matter. We just wanted to draw your attention to that new accounting policy that we adopted. So there's just an extra paragraph if you compared it to say, hey, our policy changed, but again, it did not materially change your number. So going into our key audit areas, as an auditor, our job is to make sure that we're unpredictable, right? We want to make sure that David and his team don't know exactly what we look for. And so, so we change our approach every year, but there are obviously there are higher risk areas that we focus on to make sure that everything's above board and correctly presented. So these key audit areas, I'm not going to bore you by reading them, but there's no change to the significant areas that we spend the most of our time addressing the audit risk. But I do assure you that poor David and his team had to deal with some, we throw a wrench every year and make sure that he doesn't know what we're doing. And I'm going to hand it over to Ralph, who is much more interesting to listen to talk about the financial statement highlights.
Thank you, Charlie. Of course, my wife went back to differ with that. So let's go through. I'd like to go through is just some general highlights and we'll say big picture items in the financial statements in terms of movements and fluctuations in numbers, just to highlight any or movements or trends. And then this way here, it'll help resolve hopefully any questions the board may have with trends in the financial statement. So this is just a financial statement highlight graph. And it basically highlights over the last 3 years, assets have been increasing. Liabilities have been relatively stable. Revenue had a little dip last year. It's moved up a bit in total. And also expenses have crept up a bit in the current year. Now on the next page, if we go along, if we were to take a look at our balance sheet on the audit report, which is referenced on page 3, we have a small decrease in cash this year, about $107,000. That decrease is reasonable given consideration of just the general trends in the company, and the cash balances are generally stable year over year. Now, investments, we had a decrease in investments of about $1 million, and that gave rise to the fact that investments, additional funding was needed for operating and also the investments in fixed assets and the property and equipment. So money was drawn to be able to make those improvements and put the assets in service. Those withdrawals were offset by a better performance this year. Obviously, the investments performed much better in 2023 calendar year compared to 2022. So overall, there's about a $740,000 unrealized gain and about $400,000 or $500,000 worth of interest in dividends, which was up over the prior year. So overall, it was an overall decrease of investments of about $1 million. Accounts receivable increased a little bit, about $250,000 compared to last year. And that was just simply from timing differences. No alarm there. Cash collections came in January instead of December. So a little bit of movement year to year in the numbers. Increase in property equipment of about $2.9 million overall between construction and process, equipment, building improvements, pools, and other structures. So heavy investment in amenities and so forth for the members and for their benefit and to keep the properties in good working order. Liabilities, you'll notice on the statement of financial position, were relatively stable year over year. Overall improvement in the organization's book value as net increase in assets. Net assets were about 1.4 million, improving the organization's solvency. And then decrease in revenues of about 191,000, which we'll get into, and an increase in expenses of about $500,000, which we'll get into. On our next slide, just to take a deeper dive into revenue, these are just the major areas of revenue and sources of revenue over the last 3 years. So member dues, capital and initial fees for transfers of property, investment income, member, tenant, and guest fees, as well as program revenue. So on our next slide, we talk a little bit about the movements in those. So at this point, we are on the statement of activities on page 4. So the member dues increased about 105,000. In 2023, there were 27 new members, and dues increased to $510 per member, driving that increase. Decrease in member capital and initial fees of about 403,000. So fewer homes were sold. I think anything that we discussed last March with the trends with interest rates and other activities. So we had 939 homes transferred in 2023 versus 1,042 in 2022. That was cushioned a little bit by a slight increase in the fees for each of about 2,900 in 2023 versus 2,816 in 2022. Investment income, again, performance was much better in 2023 versus 2022, about $84,000 more in interest and dividends, and then a huge swing from the unrealized loss last year to an unrealized gain on investments. Increase in member and tenant and guest fees of about 12,000, not a whole lot there, but just a slight increase in activity and sales. And then also increase in program income of about 113,000. So the number of events seemed comparable year over year. It's just that participation and attendance at those events increased in 2023, which has helped driving some additional revenue there. On our next slide, we just take a quick look at program versus general administrative costs. So the organization is holding steady at about 20, 21, 23, 22% of overall expenses attributed to general administrative activities versus program-driven items. Let's take a look at some of the big expenses. So our largest expenses come down to salaries, employee-related costs, facility maintenance, insurance, repairs and maintenance, supplies, utilities, and recreational contracts. Those are the big items in the statement of functional expenses you'll find. So looking at those in comparison, just to, again, highlight some of the trends on our next slide. So we had about an $80,000 decrease in salaries and wages. That was primarily driven by some reduction in workforce to help alleviate and outsource some of the maintenance on the properties, offset by some modest raises to keep up with cost of living adjustments. Also, a decrease in employee-related expenses to go along with those the members of the workforce that were relieved, such as decreases in medical and payroll taxes and other benefits. Increased facility maintenance. Again, there's a little shift and swing there from labor to using an outside company to help take care of the properties. And then insurance was stable year over year, and repairs and maintenance was up a little bit to take care of some needed repairs on the property year over year. On the next slide, supplies were up just a little bit for higher consumption of hardware supplies in 2023 versus 2022, and then an increase in utilities, primarily related to more gas consumption. But all areas in utilities were up slightly. The pool has been in service now, being heated, and a number of the other properties are consuming utilities, again, for the member benefits. So a lot of these trends were not shocking to us. They made sense in light of the trends in terms of expansion and new construction and new acquisitions. So hopefully those will help alleviate some questions the board may have looking at the financial statements year over year. Statement of cash flows on our next slide. You'll notice that the statement of cash flows on page 8, that cash flow provided from operating activities decreased year over year. And some of that resulted from a little bit the reduction in cash flow from the increased operating costs, as well as some timing difference in cash collections, as I mentioned earlier, from year to year in 24 versus the end of 2023. Cash used by investing activities decreased primarily from just less movement in the security account for less security purchases in 2023. Nothing alarming there. And cash used by financing activities overall was comparable year over year. And then on our next slide, I'm going to turn it back over to Carly. She's going to take you through some of the key notes in the financial statements.
We probably should have planned the height difference a little bit better. Okay, so we just wanted to highlight some notes that either changed or were enhanced, and things we feel is important to point out. And so again, as I mentioned several times, we had the accounts receivable change. So if you look at note A, and I'm sorry, I don't have the financial statements in front of me, but note A is the note where we describe all of the accounting policies, starting at page 9. And in that area, again, if you did a comparison year to year, the way we describe the accounting for accounts receivable and the allowance for doubtful accounts, or what we're now calling the allowance for credit losses, that disclosure changed a little bit to adhere to the new standard changes. And then we also describe, there's a nice, fairly succinct description of that new accounting standard for anybody who's, got extra time by the pool to do some fun reading. There's a description in the new accounting pronouncements section of note A as well that describes what I briefly touched on there. Note C, this year compared to last year, we added a table that shows by type of investment, the fair value and what it's currently valued at compared to the cost basis, because we thought that might be a little bit more useful to see. We've talked about the swing in the investment this year versus last year from an unrealized loss to an unrealized gain. And so we thought it would be nice to have a tabular format to see which investment types are doing well and what the difference is between what you paid for them and what they're worth right now. So that was an addition this year. And then note L, I will always bring to your attention note L. There's not really a change in the disclosure, but I think it's important to point out what your funded status is compared to what your reserve study said. And this year, as of the end of the year, your fully funded reserve balance, you were at about 82% compared to 78% at the same time last year. So good to keep track of, and that was a positive swing there. So every year when we do an audit, we consider things that we might recommend for improvement. If there were significant deficiencies or material weaknesses where we thought a process wasn't working well, or we found really significant material financial statement adjustments that were required, we work with management to provide a report so that in the future that those can be addressed. So I'm happy to report that last year's management letter comments, we always circle back and make sure that any concerns we had were addressed, and we didn't really have huge concerns, but the staff took the recommendations from last year and implemented them. So we were happy to see that. And this year we actually had fewer comments, so that's a plus. That's great. The one comment that we did have that we described as a significant deficiency was we did have more smaller immaterial adjustments this year. And I think a lot of that was due to some transition and responsibilities. So our recommendation to David and his team was to just make sure that when there's a transition from who's performing a task, that there's, enhanced oversight and review in that probationary period to make sure that those processes are still followed and as the new person is learning. So that was really our only recommendation. I will say something that we talked about last time we were here is related to FDIC insurance coverage. And I can talk to 10 bankers or, 10 people, and everybody has a varying opinion on how risky this is. And it is clearly something that we've been talking about, at least financial reporting professionals in the banking industry. It's clearly something we've been talking about in light of bank failures that have happened. I think since we talked to you guys last time, a couple of more banks failed. One of the things I will tell you is in doing some of the discussions and the research, the uninsured cash balances of banks that have failed, very tiny percent of people actually lose money. So it's not something, I'm not being an alarmist. I don't think it's something you should be terribly concerned about, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say that it's something you should be managing. And based on our discussions with the board and with management, it's clearly something you guys are aware of and trying to manage. And you did have a reduction in the amount of your uninsured cash this year compared to last year, but it's just something you want to be aware of and keep your eyes on. I do know in light of some of the recent events, there are some banks offering where you can basically have one relationship with a bank and then they work on, I think they're called feeders, where they basically spread your deposits out with multiple organizations so that you get more insurance coverage. Again, if it's something you guys want to pursue, yeah, we, Ralph and I work quite a bit with people in the banking industry. We have a lot of people that we would be happy to refer you to. And I know I spoke with one who specifically mentioned they'd be happy to come give a presentation to you guys. So there's some new options to get more coverage there. Again, I don't think it's a humongous risk. I'm scared to say that because some people do think it's a humongous risk, but it's just something that you want to manage in light of the recent event. All right. I think that's all I've got. I'm going to hand it back over to Ralph.
Thank you, Carly. So the next thing we want to do is just end off with some industry updates. Now, I think last year I had mentioned that when we got to this point in our presentation that although GVR is not necessarily directly correlated, it is similar in nature to a homeowners association. So looking at industry statistics, homeowners associations and this type of structured environment member organization have experienced revenue growth of about just under 0.5% over the last 5 years. And that was negatively impacted a lot by COVID because it's in that 5-year window. And when we talk about 0.5% growth, we're talking about growth in members. So we're not talking about growth in fees or those types of things because these numbers are inflation adjusted. So, which includes about a 1.2% decline in 23 alone. But over the next 5 years, industry revenue will rise at an annual rate of about 1.7% projected. So if you add in inflation, you're looking more at around 4% overall for growth. So the industry will be negatively impacted by homeownership rates. There's a lot of statistical research that a lot of people who are in the millennial and Gen Z movement are homeownership averse. They prefer a more carefree lifestyle and not necessarily the responsibility of being saddled by assets. Nonetheless, GVR, as I mentioned up here, has a slightly different market, and that's retirees. Now, as we talked about this, we have in Arizona here in Tucson, a lot of people coming from California, other parts of the country. Industry research indicates that people from all parts of the country, look at me, I'm from Rhode Island. So from Rhode Island all the way to the other side of the country. So ultimately, it's a positive factor for GVR because even in my years of being here since I moved here, there are a lot of people, even in the greater Tucson metro area, even one person who works for us actually, who said recently, I'm looking forward to moving out of Tucson and moving to Green Valley because I like a more rural feel. And I think Tucson is becoming too developed for me. So even within the limits of the greater Tucson metro area, there's positive things coming with regard to development. Baby boomers are the largest segment of retiring people right now. And over the next 10 years, we're probably going to see the last of the baby boomers retire. So they generally have lower credit requirements. They're not worried about whether prime rate is 20% or whether it's 3%, because for them, they're coming in cash heavy from another property. So that's a good thing because with the rise in interest rates over the last year or so, it really is not or should not impact a person's desire to come in and move. And we're talking about this a little bit because of the home transfer fees that are in the budgetary lines of GVR. So senior living communities will continue to be a key element. Housing starts are a key external driver in the industry. Now, current data shows, as of February 24, that housing starts are up in the Tucson metro area about 65% over the last 12 months. Now you might say, well, the interest rates are up, what's going on? Well, what's really happening is banks, now that the interest rates have been up a while and everyone took a step back and was waiting to see who was going to collapse and fall apart and fall on their face, things are still moving. The economy is still moving forward. GDP's been positive. So right now, bankers have they're still cautious, but they kind of backed away from that, stand back and watch. And so they're actually more open to construction projects. And so the combination of those increased in permits that are pulled, they're changing viewpoints in the banking industry. So it could be that on a go forward basis, there may start to be some more development and contractors moving forward with projects. Ultimately, you're going to continue to have demand coming, which is the big driver. If there's enough demand, they'll build. And as one person who I know who just recently visited California said, I like being in Tucson better because it doesn't cost me $100 to fill up my SUV. So ultimately, you're going to continue to have that movement. And an interesting point I wanted to bring out is that the Swiss Bank this past week was the first to cut rates. So now the Federal Reserve is saying that they're taking a viewpoint this past week that the economy is still moving forward, labor markets are strong, and spending is strong. They don't want to leave rates too high now that inflation is bumping down back to where it should be towards their target rate of 2%. They don't want to leave them too long where it stifles economic growth. So the Federal Reserve is planning 3 rate cuts this year. So whether that's 100 basis points or 150 basis points, time will tell. But it's a positive indicator that once capital becomes more available, builders keep building because the money's cheap. And so with that, again, just to tie that in, you know, from a conservative standpoint, it might be good to budget for similar homeownership transfer fees, but not get too aggressive. But at least there's some positive light on the other side here that, if anything, we may see more development and people moving in, and therefore more revenue for GVR. Next slide. And as far as upcoming accounting standards, you get a year updated. No, you don't have to deal with the FASB this year because there's no standards coming into effect, at least ones that will affect Green Valley Recreation. So good news there. And finally, we just want to thank both the staff, the CFO, and the president, and everyone with Green Valley for their cooperation throughout the audit. And also want to thank the board of directors for the opportunity to serve Green Valley and to help make an impact here. So with that, we'll just open up for any questions. I guess that means the questions were answered along the way. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate being here.
That all went really well. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to transition into my laptop and then give you kind of a continuation of some of the statistics and things that are really just more germane to GVR. So give me one sec. Yeah, it worked. Yeah. Water, I promise. All right, so here we are wrapping up 23. Thank you again for the audit. It was a pleasure working with you both as well, as usual. Thank you for a great audit. Thank you, David, and your team for doing a great job. really. Thank you. You're the ones that pulled it all together. So let's just take a look at this year. How did it go? I always like to start off with the verbiage that's on the left side of this, which is our mission statement. I just want to repeat it because this is our guiding light. This is why we show up every day and do the things that we do. And I have to turn my head sideways a little bit, but our mission statement is to provide excellent facilities and services that create opportunities for recreation, social activities, and leisure education to enhance the quality of our members' lives. That's why we are here. We're here to enhance the quality of our members' lives. We strive to do that every day. Right now we're trying to move forward and it's not. Yep. Outward. Right. Transition very easily. Look at that. All right. Whew. All right. So this is kind of a comparison of where we were from last year to what we accomplished this year. Again, kind of we're dovetailing a little bit on some of the statistics that Ralph just talked about. But in 23, we ended with 13,667 members. This was a slight increase of 20, not members, member households. These are rooftops. This was a slight increase of 27 households over 22. Total membership, just over 22,000, exactly 22,342. This was an increase of 19 over 22. By the decade, this is always fun. We do this every year, but since we're kind of sort of a retirement community, although a lot of people don't know that we are not member restricted, we do have members that are under 55 that are part of GVR. Little statistic, did you know? So anyway, in terms of decades, our most popular year was 1940s. Most of our members were born in the 40s, followed by the 50s, followed by the 30s. And our most popular birth year was 1947. Very busy this year. This year we issued just over 1,400 guest passes, slight increase of 17 over 22. We issued over 1,300 tenant passes, which was an increase of 106. We issued 90 life care passes, which was an increase of 16. When I wrapped up last year, we talked about the things that we would be looking at for 23. Let's see how well we did. Here's some of the things that we said that we would do. We would build a glass art studio. The president talked about that. We would launch a new website. We would commence final clubhouse improvements. We would plan expansion of ceramics, wood shop, and the metal club. We would improve center security, evaluate expansion of Las Campanas and Santa Rita Springs fitness centers, and we would book new classes and a fresh approach to trips and tours. So, Desert Hills Fitness Center and Studio, that was the picture on the very beginning of the slide. Great success, very popular. The Desert Hills Fitness Studio and center has been state of the art. A lot of people are really enjoying it. Our numbers really show that it's a very popular facility. We completed that. We've recently installed a water fountain, which a lot of people said, why didn't you install a water fountain? Well, we just did. We completed the glass art studio. This was a big lift. It's been in the works for years, a couple years. We started out maybe wanting to put that at the Canoa Hills Clubhouse, and then decided it made more sense to move it over to Santa Rita Springs, which is where it is, about 4,200 square feet, if I recall. The Canoa Hills Center renovation. This was a big project. It was delayed, unfortunately. We kind of anticipated that, but because of supplies and then taking tile off the walls in locker rooms. We really uncovered there were some plumbing issues, but great success. Hopefully that will be the standard of our centers going forward. It's a nice refresh. If you haven't had to look, please do, but that's the Canoa Hills Center renovation. Then the Del Sol Clubhouse. Again, we have been working on this for years, as you know. Our board moved forward with approving a contract this year to actually finish the construction project. It's underway now. We're anticipating that that project will be wrapped up in June. We're continuing to pursue beverage and food opportunities. We're really looking at finding a vendor to be able to do this for us rather than in-house. As I've said before to the board and publicly, we really don't want to go into the restaurant business. We could if we had to, but we really don't want to. We would really much rather work with an existing vendor in the area. Other things, we launched a new website this year. Great, very exciting. There's less clicks than previously. It's more intuitive. It's easier to navigate. It's easier to find the information that you want. The second check, it says it's underway because it's a work in progress. It's always a work in progress. Revitalizing and expanding our fitness program, same thing. It's always a work in progress. Same with our leisure education program. And then we are working on bringing some concept drawings and some cost estimates back to our board about West Center Club enhancement plans. This would include potential expansion to woodworking, artisan shop, and lapidary. In 2022, we wrapped up a member survey. We presented those results last year at this meeting, and there were 3 items that the members emphasized that were most important to them. Number 1 was to pursue greater operational efficiencies. Number 2 was to complete capital projects and facility improvements. We just talked about that quite a bit. Number 3 was to continue to improve board functionality, professionalism, and productivity. I can honestly say things I think have improved. We've got several orientations and retreats planned, training and education opportunities on how to be a fantastic board and how to be a better board member. Those are coming up in the near future. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that we have taken in 23 to pursue greater operational efficiency. Number 1, we reorganized field and customer service. That has been really successful. Hopefully you've all seen some of the benefits of that. We consolidated 3 recreation catalogs into 1, which actually provided an 8% savings despite rising costs in paper and a 9% increase in demand for those catalogs. We continue to transition our lighting over to LED, which is a huge efficiency savings. Ralph talked quite a bit about how some of our costs for personnel have come down because we did outsource custodial. We tried it. We heard from a lot of you that after a while, it wasn't as successful as we had hoped. We started off really successful. The firms that we contracted with hit the ground running, did a great job. We heard positive feedback. We were able to save some money. And then after about 3 to 6 months, we started hearing complaints from our members that the standard for custodial services just wasn't up to our standards or our expectations. And we were happy to hear from you on that. And we agreed 100%. So we have transitioned back. We're still in that process. We found that working with outside firms on this type of item, there just wasn't enough buy-in from those employees that didn't work for us, but they worked for a firm. There wasn't enough ownership or enough pride in the work that they were doing. So we've done the analysis. We can bring this function back in-house for about $28,000 a year. Which was really what we anticipated initially, and it wasn't fully implemented. Now we're fully implementing our plan. And again, it's going to cost us about $28,000 more. We're absolutely anticipating that we're going to see better results by bringing this service back in-house. Most of these employees that are going to serve as our custodians are part-time, which does save us money in the end because we don't have to pay benefits. But please let us know if you're finding that the services that we're providing in terms of cleanliness just aren't up to the standards, because we want to make sure that we are meeting and beating the standards when it comes to cleanliness. Overall, we saw 1.5% reduction in operating budget expenses over 23, which is a real testament. Let's talk about recreation because that's what GVR is about. We are all about recreation. We often joke and say, this is fun. We're supposed to be recreating. This is why people come here. So let's make sure that we focus on this. All right. So our fitness program, there's a lot of the improvements that we made in 23. 66 fitness orientations conducted. That's huge. I don't know how many of you have actually been to our fitness centers. We certainly encourage it. There are many times I go to the gym quite a bit. There are many times I will see new members trying to work on the equipment. They don't quite know how to use it. They'll just kind of approach it in a way that they're a little apprehensive. That's why we have orientations. We hold these regularly. So please sign up if you haven't. It's a lot of fun and you want to make sure that you're able to use the equipment properly. We increased our personnel trainer from 3 to 8. Again, we're all about fitness and recreation, so we want to make sure that we have those services available. We reduced our equipment time that was down for repairs. Some of our equipment previously and in previous years sat there with yellow tape or a sign around for a couple months, which is way too much. Granted, we have a lot of fitness centers. It doesn't matter. We want to make sure that our equipment is up and running. So we've been able to reduce that downtime. We've also expanded offering for some of our fitness activity, indoor cycling, boxing, aqua Zumba, and some others. Our performance and entertainment programs are huge. We held 33 events this year. They were all very successful, and those were supported by a lot of volunteers, 92 exactly. We had 92 volunteers that assist us with our arts and entertainment events. We also provided some new options with arts and entertainment. We're really trying to expand. We're hearing from our members about what kind of activities, events you want. We held quite a few pop-up events at pools. We've had pool parties. We still do the movie at the pool, which is a lot of fun. Some of the things that we did, we started a complimentary yoga class in 23, really successful. We increased our comedy acts and events from 2 to 5. Comedy is always very popular. And then just last week before, we held a St. Patty's Day pop-up event at the pool at the Canoa Center. A lot of people were there. It was a lot of fun. We held an eclipse viewing event. That was very popular on the Fiesta deck at Santa Rita Springs. And then we held various paint and sip events, which were popular each time. This is painting and having a little wine. People love it. It's a lot of fun. Some of the success stories, one in particular that I really want to emphasize is the revitalization of our leisure education program. These numbers are a little astounding, frankly. But in 23, we held we offered 599 courses for our members. This was an increase of 210 courses. We had over 7,000 enrollees to our courses. This was an increase of over 1,800 members. 171 of our courses were completely full, which is a success, but it also indicates that we need to continue doing this. 94 of those courses had wait lists, very popular. People couldn't get in. So again, that's a sign to us that we need to expand and have more courses. This was an increase of over 51 from last year. We're kind of like a small community college, frankly. By looking at these numbers, this is astounding. We have 59 clubs currently. Clubs really make up GVR. They're really the heart of GVR. We have 1 new club in 23. This is the Italian club, and then 3 clubs disbanded, the Colorado Club, and we had 2 small bridge groups that disbanded. Overall, we have 9,500 members that are part of clubs. Remember, our population for membership is somewhere around 22,500. Well, 9,500 of these, and some of these are duplicates, are part of clubs. This has been an increase of 413 over 22. So people are really enjoying their clubs. Our most popular clubs, these are by the numbers. Pickleball, which is not surprising, 983 members. This is an increase of 34. This is a small city. Number 2 was the Computer Club, 853 members. This was an increase of 38. Photography Club, again, not surprising, 651 members, an increase of 38 over 22. Woodworking, still very large, 468. Surprisingly, there was a decrease of about 100 members there. We're not quite sure why, but we'll be talking to woodworkers to see if we can help them figure out if there was an issue or concern. 5, Amigas, which was 424 members. This was a decrease of 65. This was all followed by the Forum Club, the Hiking Club, the Tennis Club, Play Club, and the Meditation Club. The Meditation Club is growing by leaps and bounds, and I'll show you why. We'll get there in a minute. Overall, we had 14 sports clubs with just over 2,500 members. This is 132 fewer than in 22. We have 12 arts and crafts clubs, 1,900 members. These are growing. People are really enjoying their arts and crafts. 338 increase over last year. We have 10 social clubs, just over 1,300 members. This is 90 more than last year. 15 card and game clubs, just over 1,000 members, 61 fewer than last year. We're seeing this trend. People aren't joining as much as they used to, but they are still having a lot of other interests. We have 7 special interest clubs, 24, almost 2,500 members in special interests, huge increase of 571, more than 22. Greatest membership increases, like I said, meditation, and we all need to do it, is increasing significantly. We had an increase of 116 over last year. And I think maybe that's something we might do with the board, is start to do a little bit more meditation. Canine Club, 76 increase in canine members. Not that the members are the canine. Lapidary and silversmithing, we saw a big increase of 75. Santa Rita Art League, 57. And Monday Informal Duplicate Bridge was an increase of 40. Our greatest club reductions in membership: tennis, woodworkers, Amigas, the Michigan Club, and Hearts. So very interesting with this. How do we do this? How do we make this all happen? We've already talked a little bit about the volunteers. 92 of them this year helped us with arts and entertainment. We had 14 board members that served this year. I want to thank you all for your help. You're the ones that pull it together and make this all happen. We had 36 members on each of our committees. These are board-appointed advisory committees. They advise the board on policy matters. We had 36 volunteers participating in this. Again, we couldn't do without it. Thank you. 82 full-time staff and 22 part-time staff. This was as of December 31st. Thank you all so much. We have an amazing team. We talk about this internally at our leadership level quite a bit, but we are all very confident, feel very good that we have the best team that we have had in years working to support this organization, to support our mission, and to support, again, why we're here to provide and improve the lifestyles of our members. Some of the things that we, and the president, Marge Carno, talked about this. What are we going to do this year? Well, we've done a lot of big things so far. We're going to tone it down a little bit this year, but we still have some things that are exciting and we want to move forward on. We're looking forward to improving the kiln room at the ceramic studio, which is at Desert Hills. Completing the clubhouse renovations. This is the Del Sol clubhouse renovations. Again, we anticipate this will be completed in June. We're still working to secure a vendor to provide some type of food and beverage options. I'm hoping that we can have a vendor up and ready and running by September so that we can at least be ready before our fall visitors start to show up. But that's our goal. West Center Clubhouse enhancements. I don't think we're going to be able to make the enhancements in 24, but I'm pretty confident that we should at least have a plan that can be blessed and approved by the board, and that we can start to move forward on how we're going to do that in 25. We're going to be doing some outreach. These are some of the projects that were budgeted for this year's budget. We want to do the outreach with our members to make sure that it makes sense to move forward with these. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But we want to make sure that we've reached out to all of you so that you have an opportunity to provide input on these. But we're going to be conducting input on the Desert Hills locker room renovation. This may or may not include the addition of a steam room. We'll see. We'll see what you want to do. We're also going to be looking at possibly converting the auditorium at Canoa Hills to a gymnasium. This outreach is scheduled for April 4th, 8 a.m. This, of course, will be at Canoa Hills. This is a charrette. So we're going to be talking to all of you about really what your interests are, why or why not we should do this. And if we do it, what would you like to see? We're also implementing a new facility use policy, which is to improve efficiency and member access to our rooms. This will be a big change. This is a policy change. The board has supported this, and so we're going to implement it as best we can and as smoothly as we can. But this is a change for our organization. But it's really supposed to be and is member driven. We want to make sure that our members feel like they're being heard and they can actually participate in the facilities that they help pay for. And that's it. Thank you so much. This is the end of our 23 year, but we're really looking forward to 24. Thank you all for being here. At 10:30, we're going to reconvene. Did you want to say a few more words? For a special meeting where the board will elect its officers. So thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
Okay, first off, I would like all of the GVR staff to stand up, please. You guys too. Come on. We appreciate you. We appreciate all the help that you've given the board, and we thank you very much. Now the board, stand up. We have two new members. We have Nellie. Stand with us, Nellie. Come on, Candy. There we go. We have Nellie and we have Candy who have taken the spot. Oh, there he is. Bart left the room and came back in. So I want to thank the board. We've come a long way this year. We've worked really hard to try not to fight too much. We've gotten a lot done. We've supported the staff when we felt like they were doing the right thing, and we've let them know when we thought they weren't. Of course, they did the same for us. So I want to thank this board and the new board members, and we're going to follow this meeting with electing our officers. So thank you. I can make you all stand up. Oh, you're not going to do it, huh? Well, I want to thank you for coming. We do appreciate your emails. We do appreciate anytime I get an email to the board, I always respond. Sometimes Scott cringes when I respond, but I do respond. So if you have a concern, if you have a question, you want to tell me how wonderful we are, just send us an email to board@gvrec.org. Got it this time. I've been sending them to the wrong address for half a year. So I don't know where they are. IT will find them out in the middle of the internet somewhere. So we do appreciate you coming to this meeting. Does anybody in the audience have anything that they'd like to say or address us with or comment? Is everybody awake? Okay. Well, there is no more. We're going to follow this with a meeting to elect our officers. It's been a great year, and I think we have another great year coming up. So thank you. Meeting's adjourned. Right?